Alright guys, welcome back to the channel. Sebastian Fundora, the Towering Inferno, has lit ablaze once again. This time, stopping future Hall of Famer Keith one-time Thurman within 6 rounds, hurting him multiple times. A path of destruction from Fundora, and the referee had no choice but to call a halt to the action in the 6th round. Before we dissect the action, please do head down the bottom there, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and make sure at the very end you leave all your thoughts in the comments. Alright, all credit to Sebastian Fundora. I mean, Keith Thurman, not a easy task. Like I said, a future Hall of Famer, a former welterweight champion, and Sebastian Fundora made it look easy today. Sebastian Fundora was all over him from start to finish. We're going to talk about Keith Thurman's performance, but we're going to start by giving credit to Sebastian Fundora. He had a task ahead of him, a crafty, veteran, experienced fighter in Keith Thurman, somebody that has beaten a lot of good names over the course of his career. Only the one loss on his resume to date, and Keith Thurman was absolutely demolished from start to finish, and Sebastian Fundora made his intentions clear from early. I mean, it was only 5 or 10 seconds into the fight, and Sebastian Fundora already landed a massive left hand that hurt Keith Thurman. Come round 2, another left hand lands on Keith Thurman's jaw. Keith Thurman doing the best he could to stay on his feet. The legs wobbled. He buckled completely, but just stood off the canvas, and that really showed what this fight was going to be. It was one-way destruction from Sebastian Fundora, and, you know, Keith Thurman was just eating punch after punch after punch. By the 5th round, his face was a mess. By the time of the stoppage, his face was a complete and entire wreck. In round 5, he was very, very lucky to survive. I thought the referee could have very easily stood in and said, no, that's enough for today, because Sebastian Fundora was all over him from the outside, from the inside, landing big punches, uppercuts, hooks, straights. Every single punch in the book, he was landing flush on Keith Thurman, and Keith Thurman looked like he had no resolve and no answer to Sebastian Fundora. And Sebastian Fundora growing on leaps and bounds every single fight, and I think the best part about Sebastian Fundora's growth has been his fighting at distance. Today, most of the fight was at distance, and he was piecing Keith Thurman apart, using those long levers, using that wingspan, and landing massive punches. Now, I've given my credit to Sebastian Fundora. I thought he was excellent today. He had his task ahead of himself, and guess what? He answered every single question he was asked today. The problem is, I don't like the questions he was asked today. Now, what I mean by that is, Keith Thurman, for me, although Sebastian Fundora fought very well at range, pieced him apart, landed big shot after big shot after big shot, making a statement performance today, when your opponent is throwing absolutely nothing at you, there was no output from Keith Thurman. I'm pretty sure he was breaking his own records for the least amount of punches thrown per round. No output from Keith Thurman. All Keith Thurman did was run and run and run. And the worst part about Keith Thurman's performance today was not only was he was running the wrong way. You know, you're versing a southpaw, you run to your left. And all day, he was running to his right, straight in line with that left hand from Sebastian Fundora. So Sebastian Fundora's work was really made quite easy today. He had to worry about very minimal coming back at him, and Keith Thurman was running into his punches. So as much as the credit's there for Sebastian Fundora and the performance he did today, because it was one-way dominance from him, and I will reiterate that, it was one-way traffic and a great performance by Sebastian Fundora, and today's performance probably troubles most people at super welterweight. Keith Thurman's performance today was piss poor. We saw a Keith Thurman today that looked like he was struggling from 6 years of inactivity. I mean, 2 fights in 6 years, 15 rounds since that Manny Pacquiao fight in 2019. He looked poor today, and at 37 years of age, looked slow, looked sluggard, looked out of ideas, and looks like we've seen probably the last of Keith Thurman. You know what? Credit to him. I mean, he stood in there for a very long time, taking an absolute beating, but whatever game plan was put out today was completely wrong. It was a dreadful performance by Keith Thurman. He looked like he was more interested in running the whole entire fight. Whether that was a reflection of that first punch he took, and that really, you know, scared the life out of him after that early punch within the first 10 or 15 seconds. And he says, I can't take these punches. I've got to find another way. And that's what ruined the game plan. Whatever it was a poor showing from Keith Thurman at 37 years of age. Not only was he poor today, but I think we've seen the last of him. And at the end of the day, Keith Thurman is a welterweighter. All right, he's a welterweighter going up against one of the biggest super welterweighters of all time, if not the biggest. And Sebastian Fundora towers over all super welterweighters, never mind a welterweighter. So Keith Thurman looked out of sorts today, out of answers. This game plan of timber went out the window because he was just swinging aimlessly at the head, barely any body work. A few times he would accelerate into attacks, but ultimately, from somebody that's supposed to have veteran experience, that know-how, that amateur pedigree, that professional pedigree, that world title level pedigree, the game plan was non-existent. The mindset was non-existent. There was no jab to work into attacks. There was no work from the outside. There was no changing of game plans to fight on the inside when you could clearly get no sort of entry into attacks from the outside. And this movement laterally to the right consistently. I mean, I know that you have to move to your left against a southpaw. So a really, really disappointing and poor showing from Keith Thurman. He held his hands up at the end there, yelling at the referee, telling him that he was fine and to continue, even though his face was cut all over. There was mouses appearing everywhere, and he was getting absolutely demolished for the last 4 or 5 minutes of that fight. I couldn't agree more with the referee to step in and stop that fight. All Keith Thurman was going to do is get his head blasted off. So really disappointing from Keith Thurman. To be fair to Keith Thurman, nobody came into that fight realistically saying Keith Thurman was going to win it. And that's where we're going to get on to Sebastian Fundora. Keith Thurman went 6 rounds against the guy that basically everybody predicted would knock you out and stop you. So for Keith Thurman, the game plan was terrible, no body work. And by the 4th or 5th round, there was no composure at all from Keith Thurman. Composure was out the window. We're talking just from an absolute mile away from him, big overhands from left and right, missing by a mile and getting counted off him. I mean, really, really poor and disappointing. And what could be the end to Keith Thurman's career could have ended on a really sour note. A note that probably didn't need to end on, because today was disappointing. A very good Hall of Fame worthy career of Keith Thurman today was a disappointing showing from him. Sebastian Fundora, dominance from start to finish, so credit to him. But this is where we get the step up. Like I said, Keith Thurman came into this fight. Nobody was predicting him to win that fight. Ultimately, I don't rate fighters that come into fights where they're expected to win and that's what they do. I want to see fights where you go in there and there's the question of, I reckon this fight could go either way. This is a 50-50 fight. This is a tough test. That's what Xander Zayas was supposed to be with him when he just vacated his belt to take on Tim Tszyu. That's why we have an interim champion right there in Vergil Ortiz. And that's who I want to see Sebastian Fundora fight. For me to truly rate Sebastian Fundora the way some people do, for me it's not there yet. If he wants to be rated, he needs to take on a challenge. And those challenges are Vergil Ortiz, Josh Kelly, Jerome Bootsenis, Xander Zayas. These names alike. He's got to take on a big guy, not a 37-year-old inactive Keith Thurman who is a natural welterweighter. At the end of the day, that fight was always going to go one way. The fight went that one way, and there is no surprises. And for me, you just can't rate a fighter off the back of that. All right? The reason you rate someone like Shakur Stevenson off that performance against Teofimo Lopez was because it was Teofimo Lopez, Shakur Stevenson stepping up, taking that challenge against the best fighter in the division and beat him. You know, Crawford beating Errol Spence, Crawford moving up and beating Canelo. These are big statement wins. And fortunately, you know, you get that fight against Tim Tszyu, the first one. You beat him just in a fight he couldn't see. All right, you redeem yourself smacking him in the second one. But the Chordell Booker fight, that's not the level. Keith Thurman here, that's not the level. You've got your interim there. Go and challenge him. Show why you're the best WBC super welterweight in the world right now. And you don't do that beating somebody that is a welterweighter. So that is sort of my thoughts on Sebastian Fundora. Like I said, today he dominated Keith Thurman, and you can't really criticize the performance. If you're talking about the performance today, it was perfect from Sebastian Fundora, fighting from the outside, picking him apart, destroying him. The referee steps in 6 rounds. Perfect night for Sebastian Fundora. He barely ate any punches. 1 or 2 overhands that sort of glanced, a few body shots here and there, but perfect from Sebastian Fundora. And I'm not criticizing his today's performance, but in terms of legacy, career, who Sebastian Fundora is at super welterweight, for me, he still needs that step up. He still needs to fight one of these other big dogs, because there's people circulating, there's people fighting in and around him. I want to see him go and take that on. We just saw Xander Zayas at his young age go and challenge another belt holder in a Bas Burrell. Sebastian Fundora, step up to the plate, take one of these big fights. And for me, there's no other fight but that Vergil Ortiz one. Vergil Ortiz doesn't have an opponent. It's easily made. Golden Boy has a good relationship with Sebastian Fundora's team. Let's make that fight happen. That's the one I want to see. Guys, let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of today's fight. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and I'm out of here, guys. See ya.